Hey guys, what is going on? It is your good buddy Sam, and today we're going to play Max once again. Specifically, we're going to play with this Autechre patch. Maybe Autechre, maybe not, depending on who you believe. And in any case, we're going to play with this patch from way back in the day. This is actually going to be, hopefully, the start of a tutorial series looking at taking this patch and breaking it down, both in terms of the patch complexity, so how to avoid things like these chords going everywhere, making this patch totally unreadable, and also conceptually, looking at kind of why the author of this patch is doing what he's doing, and how to break this patch down in terms of the ideas behind it, because really they aren't that complicated. It's just a bunch of phasers driving oscillators. Some pretty basic modular synthesis stuff if you've ever worked in an environment like that before. Before we get started, a quick announcement. If you happen to be around on Wednesday at 6 p.m. PST, you should totally head over to mixler.com/FLOTSAM, where me and my sister Sam will be trying out kind of a little podcast, Friends of Sam Listen to Music, where we're just going to listen to music. It's pretty straightforward, so if you enjoy music and you can tolerate my voice, then you should come check it out. It's going to be a gay old time. So, all that nonsense aside, let's look at this patch. This particular tutorial is going to be relatively mellow. I just want to talk about how to not, basically, how to not dispatch, because it's a mess. This is embarrassing. Whoever made this should go home and take a long look in the mirror and think about, look at this, man. All right, this replace button is all the way over here. This patch chord search is all the way over here. It intersects all these objects. It makes it look like this is involved with all this junk. It's not. It's totally orthogonal. There's some other anti-patterns going on here. All I want to get at is what I'm going to do in this tutorial basically is just clean this patch up a little bit. I'm going to do my best to keep it entertaining. It may get a little bit boring, so if you want to skip this one and go to the next one, totally fine. I will post both this patch and the cleaned up version, so you can start there if you're more interested in kind of what's going on behind the scenes, because honestly we won't touch on too much of that here. But if you have high tolerance for patch cleanup tips, then man, first of all, I respect the hell out of you. And second of all, let's do it. So the first thing that I noticed when I sit down at this patch is there's a pretty strong anti-pattern or just design mistake going on here, where you have it's totally fine to have one kind of thing controlling many different things. That's fine. That's something that may happen as you have to be building your patch. But in general, it's just not necessary. We're not paying by the patch chord here, right? We're not paying by the object. This is a digital environment. If I want more of these objects, then I can make more of these objects. It's not like every time I clone this select32 object, I have to pay DigiKey another 8 cents or something. They're free, man. Make as many as you want. So when possible, it's totally cool to sacrifice concision, to make more objects when you can actually understand what's going on. So like this guy's head is in the right place with this send O here. So key select32 send O. This will send a bang to any RO, like over here there's an RO, and that will reset this counter. And the idea here is this dude wants to be able to push space to kind of restart the state of the whole patch. Fine, no big deal, but doing it this way just makes the whole thing totally unreadable. So like for example, key select32 S0, all I need to do is make a new R0, or actually this is R lowercase o. And so this patch code, for example, is going all the way over to this one here. You know what, I'm just going to move the patch code over to this RO, move this object over here, and already, man, just like that, we've cut this whole nasty patch cord out of this patch, and it already looks a million times cleaner. So I'm just going to keep going. This patch code goes to the 0. That's fine. R0 or RO, hook that up to this object. Yeah, we have the same thing going on here. Move this up here. Let's see, this guy's going into... Oh, what is going on? Oh, I see. R0. Okay, well, that's even worse. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I couldn't tell that this patch code is actually going into this message box rather than coming out of it. So, go figure. In any case, that's like that. Could use another R. And this isn't much better. I mean, here we have this 0 from this message box going to a million different places over here. So I'm just going to clone that message box, do an R0 like this. cut this patch cord, R0, clone this message box. Doesn't this feel better? This feels like when you're in your apartment and there's just a giant stack of dishes that keeps piling up. And I'm saying all this because I just moved into a new apartment, and I started out really like on top of everything. I got into the apartment and I was like, all right, this is it. You know, this is my castle now. I own this place, and people are gonna come in here and they're gonna see all my shit together. They're gonna see all the dishes clean and everything's put away and all the clothes up on goddamn hangers, and then it'd be like, oh my god, whoever lives here. This king of his castle, man. Just absolute lord of the landscape, dominion over all things domestic. I like that, domestic dominion. But that fell apart pretty quick, you know. I mean, life is what it is, and it's all too easy to come home and see a big stack of dirty shit and be like, fuck it, no one's coming over for days. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. But that's not cool, man. That's not cool, especially when you're trying to send your patch. You know, but that's the thing. Then you have people come over and you got to clean stuff up. Maybe that's why we have friends. You know, companionship is great and all. Like whatever. I think, you know, maybe your friends have some interesting things to say. Mine do sometimes. But really, it's just about, you know, having an excuse to clean your apartment. I think all society is probably just an excuse to clean your apartment at the end of the day. Okay, what are we talking about? So I just finished collect all those connections from this key object. We don't need this connection anymore. This is going send O, RO, so this connection is totally redundant. We can delete that. And look at that, we've chopped this little piece out of all that patch. And look how much cleaner this looks already, man. Maybe it doesn't look it so much, but really it is. So that was good. Oh, look at this again, R0. Oh, hello, R0, I missed you. And by missed you, I mean did not miss you in any way. So we're just going to do all this stuff again. Really fun times. Really fun times. Oh, man. Cleaning up other people's patches. I can't even imagine what it would be like to... I've never taught Max in a formal academic setting, in case that wasn't already massively obvious, that my Max training... I think teaching Max over YouTube is definitely what I'm best suited for, because you don't actually have to be that good at it, and I can talk about things like my dirty-ass dishes without feeling like I should be upping the ante for an academic environment. I'm not a particularly academic person in general. I really do like thinking about academic things, and I like to drink Campari and pretend to be an academic. That's probably one of the most fun things there is in the world. I don't know if you guys like Campari or not. If you don't, you should make an effort to like it. Because when you drink Campari and talk about, I don't know, Schopenhauer or Schoenberg or whatever, man, do you feel like a baller. See, look at this. Like, here's what I'm talking about. It looked like, from where that R0 was positioned, that this was somehow related to this, and this was somehow related to this. But you can see now, just by the fact that this thing is not connected to any other objects, this chunk of patch right here, this is its own unique, distinct, separable entity. And that's all you have to do in this patch is break it down into actual separate components. There's no need to have this sprawling, you know, patch octopus everywhere. The way this guy laid out this patch made it look way more complex than it is. At the end of the day, it's just a bunch of oscillators side by side mixed together to make sound. That's it. Shame on you for making it. Nietzsche said, speaking of speaking of philosophers in Campari, I believe it was Nietzsche who said poets muddy their max patches to make them look deeper, unless I'm misquoting. But I think that lesson definitely holds true here, you know. People are always trying to make their max patches look more complicated than they are. And there's some pride, I think, associated with having a dirty max patch. You know, I hear people say, oh, you know, in kind of a self-congratulatory way, like, yeah, my max patch is super complex. I don't know, man, I'm not so impressed. I think it's really hard to make a patch look good, you know. And good on you if you can make a patch not only look good, but also, I mean, when you make it look good, it means you have more freedom. You know what I mean? The dirtier your patch gets, the harder it is to understand it and to make changes in your patch. I really don't like the way this buffer is up here. I'm just going to move this down here, this thing, to make this closer to what it actually... I mean, in general, if something is controlling something else, they should be close together and not crossing over huge chunks of your patch. It just seems like common sense. Okay, so we've done an okay job cutting all this stuff out. I don't like this cord going way the hell up here. to do whatever it is that it does. This R0 could be connected to this alone and not like this. It's just deliberately confusing. Move this down like here. Move this over about to here. Don't know why this replace needs to be all the way over here. That seems ridiculous. Okay, that's also a little crazy. I'm just looking for places where we can fix this receive 0 nonsense. I think we've done about all we can. Maybe we'll spot a couple later. But let's see, are there any other? Yeah, this is a different thing. We'll get to that in a second. But no, for now, I think these R0s, or these ROs, are looking pretty good. I don't see any. This is a little bit gross here. Let's just fix this really quick. I don't really see any places where this kind of R0 is sprawling totally unnecessarily over this patch. And that makes me feel way better. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do, looking at this patch, is address the fact that basically it's all just a bunch of, you have phasers driving oscillators in this patch. This patch is all phasers, and it's phasers being used for timing, really. So usually, you know, in Maxland you might use a, just notice another one of these guys. You might notice, you might use a metronome to do your timing, or you might use the global transport object to do your timing. In this patch, we actually have phasers being used both as generators of sound, so both to make sounds and also to time sounds. So, you know, we're actually, there's some phasers here, you notice some phaser objects whose frequency is quite high because they're being used to actually generate sound, and other phasers whose frequency is quite low because they're being used for timing, you know, to generate measures and phrasing and stuff like that. And for those phasers that are being used for timing and phrasing, I don't think it's, you know, sometimes one phaser is being used to time multiple objects, like right here. That's totally fine. It's totally fine, except where it makes things more confusing because it's impossible to see that the phaser is actually controlling multiple separate branches of audio computation, and that therefore it looks like things are related that actually aren't. So, for example, if you look over here at this phaser is controlling, trying to see if it's actually going down, controlling anything. Let's look at a different phaser that I know is doing this. This phaser right here, for example, is controlling this kind of stack of audio processing. It's controlling this stack of audio processing, and it's controlling as well this stack of audio processing right here. And it's just unnecessarily confusing, right? It makes it look like these two branches, for example, are related when in fact they're not. And we can clean things up a lot by abstracting this phaser out and using send and receives to make things look a little bit simpler. So let's do that. It'll also eliminate some of the clutter down here in our patch, and I think that will make us all much happier. So I'm going to start with this phaser right here. I'm going to make some space over here in the top right of my patch and make a panel. And the thing, I don't know, I like to use panels a lot, maybe a somewhat controversial choice, as it's just like, I get it. You're in the patch, you're playing around, you're having fun, you don't want to stop and make panels, and you know, it's fine for an exploratory sort of phase, but eventually you want to take the time to organize your patch a bit, because in the long run, you know, you actually will be able to, I get it that to a large extent, you know, not only Max but also digital composition is about playing around and making choices and seeing how those choices affect the sound. And that's cool, but if you think about it, cleaning up your patch kind of gives you more choices, you know, because you can see more of what you can do, and because you can hold the whole patch in your head better once it's cleaned up, you can actually make more choices and have more fun if you take the time to clean up now and again. So anyway, oh my God, I can't believe this paternalistic tone I've taken. I totally apologize. Like really, I just want to help you guys have fun, man. I have so much fun in Max. I just want to make it easier to have fun. But sometimes, safety first, what can I say? There's nothing more fun than following the rules. Am I right, kids? Huh? What an old man I've become. Okay, so this phaser right here. From now on, phaser, you are known as phaser A. I'm going to copy this receive O and the phaser and this. I'm going to move that all the way up here. And you're now going to live on top of this panel. And one thing you can do with this panel, that's another thing I'm going to do, is just select everything and go to View. I want Hide Unlock to be off. Hide Unlock, so Show Unlock. Stop hiding. Hiding complexity by doing Hide Unlock is not... There's a right way and a wrong way to use Hide Unlock. The wrong way to use Hide Unlock is... the wrong way to use Hide Unlock is to hide complexity. It's not right. That's just not right, man. Options, object. Where was it? Hide Unlock? Okay. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know why some patch codes are still hiding unlock. It's pretty mysterious. Anyway, this panel right here, I would like to add him to the background. So I'm going to do Arrange, Include in Background. And the cool thing about that is now I can do things like lock the background. So I go to View, Lock Background. And now I can select these objects in the foreground. And this panel here, I can't even select it anymore. It's like it's part of the background of the patch. And that's pretty nifty. It means I don't have to keep accidentally selecting it and deselecting it. Handy tip involving the background. Okay, so now this phaser is here. I see a send tilde phaser A. Connect these up like so. And now everywhere where I saw this phaser connected, so that's down here to this log, up here to this delta, down here to this ×1, I just do receive tilde phaser A. So I can go like this, and also like this, and again like this. Then I can, I think, completely and totally delete this phaser. Gone. And this guy as well, and move this over like this. And you're going to see this is already, this is starting to separate this chunk right here, this little pit of patch right here, from the stuff over here. And ultimately it's going to help us separate this visually into stacks of patch that we can actually work with. It's going to be great. Hope you're excited. Hope you're excited for cleaning up this patch, man. I know I am. Okay, so this is its own thing. I'm going to move this over a bit. What's going on here? This phaser is being driven by this guy that drives all this stuff. It's a very confusing patch. Very confusing based on the way it's been laid out. Top to bottom, man. Go top to bottom. I get it. You're trying to fit all this stuff on one page, but it just looks ridiculous. Just trying to get things going, flowing in the direction that they actually are operating in. Okay, so look, the only connection between this stack here, I'm going by the DACs here, the DACs and the gains. Like, so there's something being sent here from this thing over to this one here. And that's the only connection between these two. So that we should give them some separate vertical space, I think. And it'll make it much easier to actually reason about what's going on in this patch. So I'm going to move this phaser over here a bit. And just try to grab, I can actually see my way clear to grabbing. Having all this patch folded together like this, I think is a big part of what's making it so confusing. And I think if I just drag all this over, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so now something that you can see going on here is this phaser is going down into this delta tilde object. The delta tilde is measuring changes, so this will always be slightly positive as the phaser is gradually increasing. And then when the phaser jumps back to 0, this will briefly be negative. And of course, this less than tilde 0 object is going to detect that, and the edge tilde object reports a bang. So all this is doing right here is turning the phaser, the signal rate phaser, into control rate bangs. It's sending out a bang every time the phaser goes back to 0. So essentially, it's just doing timing. So what I'm going to do is take all this, copy it, and move it up here because it's related to timing. I'm trying to keep things that are related in terms of what they do close to each other. And then I'm just going to make another object, another send here. So this send phaser A is going to be sending the audio rate signal for phaser A. And then I'm also going to have a send phaser A bangs. And this is sending out bangs from phaser A. So essentially this is the signal rate version of phaser A. It's the actual phaser. And this is the control rate version of phaser A. It's all the bangs coming out of phaser A. So receive, or just R I guess, phaser A bangs. And I can plug that into this bang object. and delete all this. And look how much that is cleaning up all our junk. And you can see this bang is going way the hell up somewhere else in the patch to something totally unrelated, no doubt. So I can just copy this, see where it's going. I see it's going up to this counter that is contributing to some part of the patch unrelated to the part of the patch that we're dealing with. So we'll just delete this patch code. And now we can actually understand what's going on. I hope it's not obvious. Patch just makes me slightly frustrated to play with it, but it's going to feel so good when we actually have it all, decongested. And this patch is very much. I would say this patch is exactly like a sinus infection, in that it's frustrating, but once we get decongested, it's going to feel really good. So there's one little giant connection here going from this stack over to this stack. And this is basically a sidechain, right? This patch is doing some kind of processing. I can sort of tell from this times tilde 500 object that this stack here, or rather that what's coming out of this object is going to be something, index the steps. I have a phasor looking into an index object, multiplying by 5,000. This is probably going to be some kind of either audio signal or something with the multiply by 500 tells me it's probably outside of the 0 to 1 range, so it's probably something like a sound. In any case, I'm going to think of it as a sidechain. So I'm just going to call it send tilde, and we'll just call this sidechain A. Why not? And then we'll have receive tilde. Sometimes it's also helpful to give your send and receives a shared color. So I think, like, for example, here, these two, I'm going to select them both, come into the inspector, make them both a lovely, appealing shade of lime green. And now, like, it's really easy to tell visually, unless you're white-green colorblind, which I don't think is a thing. It's pretty easy to tell that these are, related in some way. And now, look at that, man. We've actually clipped out our first little chunk of the patch. Hooray, to some large extent. You know what I mean? Later when we go, that means that we can just not look at anything, and we can just look at this piece here and see, okay, we've got a phasor. That phasor is being interpreted in two ways, both as a signal and as a series of bangs, and that's doing some kind of processing, and that's it. You know what I mean? We're not being distracted by all these crisscrossing patch cords trying to figure out what the hell is going on. We just have this simple piece chopped out and ready for our deeper philosophical musings. So we'll leave that aside. Same thing, looks like it's basically ready to go on here. If you just kind of follow the rule that if A affects B, or if A controls B, A should be above B, then we can clean this up too really quickly. Moving this down like so. Having infinite patcher space to scroll around is very useful, is it not? Move this down to here. Bring this guy over here. Bring this down like so. Here's another phasor that's being used for counting. Maybe it would be good to move this phasor over to a, here's the thing. Here's why I might. This phasor is being used for timing, and you can see that it's going at 0.5 hertz, right? And phasor A here is going at 0.125 hertz. So phasor A is phasing, looping around every 8 seconds. This phasor is looping every 2 seconds. This one over, where did it go? I lost you, phasor. Come back. This phasor over here is going once every 2 seconds. They're both doing timing, and 2 seconds, 8 seconds. They have a simple harmonic ratio, 1/4. So it's pretty clear that the phasors are both doing timing. And so the reason I bring all that up is because you can imagine that if you double the length of this phasor or change the rate of this phasor, you're really going to want it to be in lockstep with this phasor to some extent. Like, it's clear that their timing relative to each other has some meaningful value in the context of this composition. You know what I mean? Like, if this phasor were suddenly going every 3 seconds and this one were suddenly going every 0.5 seconds, there'd be a very strong rhythmical change. The piece wouldn't be the same piece anymore. So I think that's a reason why I might abstract this out and make like a phasor B. Then when I make changes to phasor A, I could see that I was also going to be affecting phasor B. Whereas if phasor A is over here and phasor B lives all the way over here, it could be really super confusing as to whether or not there's a relationship between phasor A and phasor B, and whether we should try to preserve that as we mess with this patch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to make this phasor into phasor B. So we'll just take actually all this duplicate it, why not? So I'm going to unlock the background. Unlock background, where are you? Include in background, that's helpful. View, lock background. Grab all this, duplicate it. We'll call this phaser B. Send phaser B, receive phaser B, send phaser B bangs. And then phaser B was actually at 0.5 hertz, if I recall correctly, and of course I do. Yep, and it's also getting this receive 0. Excellent. So that means we can now do, over here we can do receive tilde phaser B bangs. Connect that, oops, shouldn't be a receive tilde, but rather just a receive. Connect that to here, and delete all of this. Isn't that exciting? So we can see this is coming from sidechain A. It depends on phaser B. You know, it's actually clear what the hell is going on in the context of this whole composition. It's good. It's a good thing we're doing. I think we're doing good work here. We're doing, I mean, it's not exactly God's work, is it? But, you know, that's max MSP. You're not saving the world. Unless you are, in which case, holy shit. I'd love to see your world-saving patch. I can't even imagine what that would look like. Feed the world. Tilde. Phaser. Okay, well, we'll just leave that where it is for now. And so that's basically all I'm going to be doing for this entire patch is cutting this patch into chunks, you know what I mean? Moving this stuff around and making this into stacks that we can actually handle. That's literally all I'm going to be doing. So maybe I will just stop this tutorial here because I think it's going to get pretty boring. And then I will post the result of the patch so you all can check it out. And we'll work from there in the next tutorial where we talk about kind of the concepts behind this patch and that kind of stuff. So hopefully that wasn't too, if you enjoyed that whole thing beginning to end, then holy shit, you are a magnificent eruption of human awesome, and congratulations on being who you are. But if you are immortal like me, then thanks for sticking through it this far. And yeah, in the next tutorial we'll talk more about the sound, and it will get a little bit more fun, I think. We'll actually hear some stuff, which will be great. So yeah, I'll meet you in that next part with the cleaned up version of this patch that I think will be a more useful point of departure as we want to play around and look at some of the ideas behind this thing. So thanks for watching. Hope that was enjoyable. And definitely check out FLOTSAM, the awesome podcast where I listen to music and talk about it with people. FLOTSAM, mixler.com/FLOTSAM, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll see you guys then. Take it easy.